My fiancée whispered to her friend at the wedding, "I'm only marrying him because my visa's expiring." Her friend whispered back, "Secure that green card." They didn't know I was standing right behind them. So, I quietly got in my car and drove away. She's been calling nonstop, and her mom called me the coward who ruined the best day of my daughter's life. Now she's facing deportation, and all I can do is smile. I'm Mike, 28M, and I work as a software engineer in Austin, Texas. I make decent money, around $95,000 a year, and I've always been the type of guy who believes in love at first sight and happily ever after. Yeah, I know how that sounds now, but I was genuinely a hopeless romantic. 6 months ago, I met Sarah, 26F, at a coffee shop downtown. She was this gorgeous woman with an accent I couldn't quite place. Turned out she was from Romania and had been in the US for about 3 years on a student visa that was transitioning to a work visa. She was working at a marketing firm, and we hit it off immediately. Our first conversation lasted 4 hours. She was charming, funny, and seemed genuinely interested in everything I had to say. She asked about my job, my family, my dreams, all the right questions. She told me about her struggles adapting to American culture, how much she missed her family back home, and how she was working hard to build a life here. Looking back, I should have noticed the red flags, but I was completely smitten. Red flag number 1, she moved the relationship incredibly fast. We were exclusive after 2 weeks, moved in together after a month, and she started talking about marriage after 6 weeks. At the time, I thought it was because European women were more direct and knew what they wanted. I was an idiot. Red flag number 2, she was always vague about her visa situation. Whenever I asked about the specifics, she'd get emotional and say it was complicated and that she didn't want to burden me with her problems. She'd tear up and change the subject, so I stopped asking. Red flag number 3, her friends. I met her friend circle early on, and they were interesting. Mostly other immigrants in similar visa situations, and they had this way of talking about Americans that made me uncomfortable. Not outright rude, but like we were means to an end. I brushed it off as cultural differences. Red flag number 4, she was obsessed with my citizenship status and kept making comments about how lucky I was to be born American. She'd joke about how she should marry me for my passport, but when I'd laugh, she wouldn't laugh back. She'd just smile this weird smile. Red flag number 5, the ring situation. When I proposed, after dating for only 4 months, yes, I know, she immediately started researching wedding timelines and kept mentioning how we needed to get married soon because she wanted to start our life together. She found out her work visa had complications around the same time I proposed. Coincidence? Probably not. The proposal. I proposed on a weekend trip to San Antonio. I had this whole romantic thing planned at the River Walk, and she said yes immediately. Before I even finished asking. She cried, but looking back, I'm not sure they were happy tears. That night, she was on the phone with someone speaking Romanian for over an hour. When I asked who it was, she said it was her mom and that she was just excited to share the news. The conversation didn't sound celebratory, though. It sounded urgent and stressed. Wedding planning. This is where things got really weird, but I was too deep in to see it clearly. Sarah insisted we get married within 2 months. She said it was because she wanted to be married before her birthday, but the urgency felt off. She handled most of the planning herself, which I appreciated since I was swamped at work with a major project launch. She invited a lot of people I'd never met. When I asked about them, she said they were family friends and distant relatives who happened to be in the US. Looking back, I think they were people in similar visa situations who were there to learn from her success. The wedding was small but nice. We rented a venue in downtown Austin, nothing too fancy but decent. About 80 people total. My family loved Sarah, especially my mom, who kept talking about how lucky I was to find someone who really loved me. The wedding day. The morning of the wedding, I woke up excited but nervous. Sarah was getting ready at the venue with her bridesmaids, and I was getting ready at home with my groomsmen. Everything seemed normal. The ceremony went off without a hitch. Sarah looked beautiful, and when we exchanged vows, she seemed genuinely emotional. I thought we were starting our happily ever after. After the ceremony, we were doing the typical photo session, meet and greet with guests, all that stuff. The reception was starting to get into full swing, and I was feeling great. A few drinks in, I was thinking about how perfect everything was. I stepped outside to get some air and check my phone. My best man Jake had texted me some photos from the ceremony, and I wanted to send them to my mom who couldn't make it. She's dealing with health issues. As I was heading back inside, I realized I'd left my phone charger in Sarah's bridal suite upstairs. The reception was on the main floor, but the bridal party had been getting ready on the second floor. I headed upstairs, and as I got close to the bridal suite, I heard voices. The door was slightly open, and I recognized Sarah's voice and her maid of honor, Jessica. I was about to knock and announce myself when I heard Sarah say, "I can't believe I actually pulled this off. I'm only marrying him because my visa's expiring in 3 weeks." I froze. Jessica responded, "Girl, you are so smart. Secure that green card. Mike seems sweet, but you're thinking long term." Sarah laughed, this cold laugh I'd never heard before. "He's so naive. He thinks this is some fairy tale romance. The timing couldn't have been more perfect when he proposed." I was literally about to get a lawyer for other options. "What are you going to do after you get your citizenship?" Jessica asked. "We'll see. Maybe I'll stick around if he's useful, or maybe I'll find someone more exciting. Americans are so easy to manipulate when you play into their fantasies. Jessica giggled. You're terrible. But honestly, this is survival. You do what you have to do. Exactly. And his family has money too. Did you see that house his parents have? This could work out really well for me. I stood there for probably 30 seconds, just processing what I'd heard. My brain was trying to make it make sense, like maybe I'd misunderstood or they were joking. But the tone, the casual cruelty of it, there was no misunderstanding. I quietly backed away from the door and went back downstairs. The reception was in full swing. Our families were dancing, people were laughing, the DJ was playing all the songs we'd picked together. Everyone looked so happy. I found Sarah on the dance floor, laughing with some of her friends. When she saw me, she smiled this radiant smile and came over to hug me. There's my husband, she said, kissing my cheek. Where did you disappear to? I looked at her face, this face I'd fallen in love with, this person I'd just promised to spend my life with, and I felt like I was looking at a stranger. Just needed some air, I managed to say. She seemed to buy it and dragged me back to the dance floor. We danced to our wedding song, and she whispered in my ear about how happy she was and how much she loved me. Every word felt like a knife. I made it through about another hour of the reception, going through the motions. I cut the cake, did the bouquet toss, took more photos. But inside, I was planning the exit. Around 9 p.m., I told Sarah I was going to get something from the car. She was busy talking to some of her relatives and just waved me off. I went to the parking lot, got in my car, and just sat there for a few minutes. I looked back at the venue where my wedding reception was happening, where everyone was celebrating what they thought was the beginning of my marriage. Then I started the car and drove away. I didn't go home, I knew that would be the first place she'd look. Instead, I drove to Jake's apartment. He was still at the reception, but I had a spare key. I sat in his living room in my wedding tux and just stared at the wall. My phone started ringing around 10 p.m. Sarah, calling over and over. Then texts started coming in. Mike, where are you? Everyone's asking where you went, this isn't funny. Please come back, you're scaring me, Mike, please answer your phone. Then other people started calling. My dad, my brother, Jake. I turned my phone off. Jake came home around midnight, still in his tux, looking panicked. Dude, what the hell? Everyone's freaking out. Sarah's crying, your family is worried sick. What happened? I told him everything. He sat there listening, getting more and more pissed off as I talked. That manipulative, he said when I finished. I never liked her, but I thought it was just because everything moved so fast. We stayed up most of the night talking through everything. Jake helped me see all the red flags I'd ignored, and we started making a plan. The aftermath. The next morning, I turned my phone back on to 47 missed calls and about 200 text messages. Sarah had apparently told everyone that I'd had some kind of panic attack and run off, and that she was worried about my mental health. I decided to go home and face the music. Sarah was there, along with her mother who had flown in from Romania for the wedding. Sarah ran up to me crying when I walked in. Mike. Thank God you're okay. I was so worried. What happened? Are you having second thoughts? We can work through this. Her mom was less sympathetic. You embarrassed my daughter in front of everyone. What kind of man abandons his wife on their wedding day? I looked at both of them, and I realized Sarah was still playing the part. She genuinely thought she could manipulate her way out of this. I heard you, I said simply. Sarah's face went white. What do you mean? Upstairs, in the bridal suite. I heard your conversation with Jessica about securing your green card and how naive and easy to manipulate I am. The look on Sarah's face shifted from confusion to panic to anger in about 3 seconds. Mike, you don't understand. I understand perfectly. You used me. This whole relationship, the proposal, the wedding, it was all about your visa status. Her mother started yelling at me in Romanian, and Sarah was crying, but they weren't tears of sadness. They were tears of frustration that her plan had fallen apart. The legal situation. Here's where it gets interesting. I called a lawyer that Monday, Jake's cousin who specializes in immigration law, to understand what my options were. Turns out, since we never consummated the marriage and I left before we completed the wedding night, I could potentially get the marriage annulled on grounds of fraud. But more importantly, Sarah's visa situation was worse than I thought. Her work visa had already been denied due to some issues with her employer. She'd been out of status for almost a month and had been banking on the marriage to fix her situation. By leaving the wedding, I'd basically torpedoed her immigration plans. The lawyer explained that marriage fraud is a serious federal crime, and while proving intent can be difficult, the fact that I had witnesses to her admission made it a strong case. I decided not to pursue criminal charges. I'm not vindictive, just hurt, but I did file for annulment and made it clear I wouldn't be participating in any green card applications. Sarah's reaction. Sarah has been calling me nonstop since that Sunday. The messages started apologetic. Mike, please let me explain. I do love you, I just panicked about my visa. We can work through this. Then they got more desperate. You're going to ruin my entire life over a stupid comment I made to my friend. I was just nervous and saying dumb things. Then angry. You're a coward who can't handle real adult problems. I thought you were better than this. Then manipulative. I'm going to lose everything. I'll have to go back to Romania where I have nothing. How can you do this to someone you claim to love? Her mother has been calling too, alternating between begging me to reconsider and calling me names in broken English. She left me a voicemail calling me the coward who ruined the best day of my daughter's life and saying I destroyed a good woman's future for no reason. Current situation. It's been about 3 weeks since the wedding. Sarah hired an immigration lawyer to try to find other options, but from what I understand, her situation is pretty hopeless. She's been staying with Jessica while trying to figure out her next move. I heard through mutual friends that she's been telling people I had a mental breakdown and abandoned her for no reason. She's painting herself as the victim of a man who couldn't handle the commitment of marriage. Some of her friends have been harassing me on social media, calling me everything from a coward to a racist. Apparently leaving a foreign woman makes me xenophobic? I've blocked most of them. My family has been amazing. Once I explained what really happened, they were completely supportive. My mom said she always thought Sarah seemed too eager to please but didn't want to say anything because I seemed happy. Jake has been my rock through all this. He's helped me see that I dodged a major bullet and that Sarah's true character coming out now is better than finding out years down the line. The deportation. Last week, I found out through mutual friends that Sarah received a deportation order. She has 30 days to leave the country voluntarily or face removal proceedings. She made one last attempt to contact me, showing up at my apartment last Friday night. She was crying and begging me to reconsider, saying she really did love me and that the green card thing was just a bonus, not the main reason. I told her through the door that I wasn't interested in talking and that she needed to leave. She stood outside for about an hour crying and pleading before Jessica came to pick her up. My feelings. People keep asking me if I feel guilty about Sarah's situation. Honestly? I don't. I feel bad that someone is facing deportation. That's not something I'd wish on anyone. But Sarah made her choices. She chose to deceive me, use me, and plan a fraudulent marriage. The consequences of those choices aren't my responsibility. Do I feel guilty about leaving the wedding? A little. It was dramatic, and I probably could have handled it better. But in the moment, I was so shocked and hurt that I just needed to get out of there. Do I miss her? I miss who I thought she was. I miss the woman I fell in love with over those 4 months. But that woman never really existed. She was a character Sarah created to manipulate me. What I've learned. This experience has taught me a lot about myself and about relationships. 1. Trust your instincts. I ignored so many red flags because I wanted the fairy tale to be real. 2. Slow down. 4 months from meeting to marriage is insane, and I got caught up in the romance of it all. 3. Pay attention to how someone talks about other people. Sarah's casual dismissal of Americans as easy to manipulate should have been a huge warning sign. 4. Actions speak louder than words. Sarah said all the right things, but her actions, pushing for a quick marriage, being secretive about her visa status, etc., told a different story. 5. It's okay to walk away. I spent the first week after the wedding wondering if I'd overreacted, but I'm glad I trusted my gut and left. Current life. I'm doing okay now. I've been going to therapy to process everything and work on my tendency to ignore red flags in relationships. My therapist says I have a pattern of wanting to rescue people, which made me an easy target for Sarah's manipulation. Work has been a good distraction, and I got a promotion last week, which felt like a positive step forward. I'm not ready to date yet, but I'm not bitter about love in general. I still believe good relationships exist, I just need to be smarter about recognizing when someone's motivations aren't genuine. Jake and I are planning a trip to Colorado next month for some hiking and guy time. I'm looking forward to getting away and clearing my head. The satisfaction. I know it sounds petty, but there is some satisfaction in knowing that Sarah's plan backfired so spectacularly. She thought she'd found an easy mark, someone she could manipulate into giving her citizenship and financial security. Instead, her greed and carelessness cost her everything. If she'd just been honest about her visa situation, we could have worked through it legitimately. I probably would have helped her find a good immigration lawyer or explored legal options for her to stay. But she chose deception and manipulation, and now she's facing the consequences. Every time my phone rings with a call from her or her mother, I just smile and decline it. Every Facebook message from her friends calling me names just reminds me that I made the right choice. Sarah is learning that actions have consequences, and that American men aren't all as naive and easy to manipulate as she thought. Final thoughts. I'm sharing this story partly to vent, partly to warn other guys to pay attention to red flags, and partly because I'm genuinely curious what Reddit thinks about the situation. Did I handle it the right way? Should I have confronted her at the wedding instead of just leaving? Should I feel worse about her deportation situation? I know some people will think I'm heartless for not feeling more guilty about Sarah's situation. But honestly, she made her bed. She chose to build our entire relationship on lies and manipulation. The fact that her plan failed isn't my fault, it's hers. And frankly, I'm glad I found out when I did. Imagine if I'd discovered this a year from now, after she'd gotten her green card and we'd maybe had kids or bought a house together. The betrayal would have been so much worse. So yeah, Sarah's facing deportation, her family thinks I'm a coward, and her friends are harassing me online. But I'm sleeping well at night knowing I stood up for myself and refused to be used. Sometimes the trash takes itself out. In Sarah's case, it's getting deported back to Romania. Update, added 2 days after original post. Thank you to everyone who commented and shared their own stories. Reading your responses has been really validating and helpful. A few people asked for updates, so here's what's happened since I posted. Sarah's friend Jessica reached out to me yesterday, not to harass me but to apologize. Apparently, after Sarah's deportation order came through, she had a breakdown and admitted to Jessica that everything you guys suspected was true. She never loved me and had been planning this green card marriage from almost the beginning. Jessica said she felt terrible about encouraging Sarah and wanted me to know that she realizes now how wrong they both were. She also mentioned that Sarah had been talking to other guys on dating apps even during our engagement, looking for backup options in case I didn't work out. That last part hurt more than I expected it to, but it also confirmed that leaving was absolutely the right choice. Also, my lawyer called with some interesting news. Apparently, Sarah isn't the only one in her friend group who was planning marriage fraud. ICE has been investigating several people in their circle, and Sarah's case might be part of a larger investigation. I won't be involved beyond providing my statement about what I heard, but it sounds like Sarah's problems are bigger than just my situation. As for me, I'm doing better every day. Started going to the gym again, spending more time with friends and family, and generally getting my life back on track. To everyone who said I dodged a bullet, you're absolutely right. And to those who asked if I'm ready to date again, not yet, but I'm getting there. Thanks again for all the support. This community is awesome. Update 2, 1 week later. This situation just keeps getting crazier. Remember how I mentioned that ICE was investigating Sarah's friend group? Well, it turns out this thing was way bigger than I thought. My lawyer called me yesterday with some wild news. Apparently, Sarah and her friends were part of an organized marriage fraud ring. This wasn't just some desperate woman trying to stay in the country, this was a full-blown operation. They had been targeting American men on dating apps for months, maybe years. The investigation started when another guy in a similar situation came forward. His name is David, and he reached out to me through Reddit after seeing my post. Turns out, he dated one of Sarah's friends, Maria, and had almost the exact same experience. Quick engagement, pushy timeline, visa complications that conveniently lined up with the proposal. The difference is David actually went through with the marriage before he figured out what was happening. He's been dealing with this mess for 8 months and has been trying to get it annulled while Maria fights him every step of the way. When David saw my post, he recognized Sarah's name and some of the details. He put me in touch with the ICE investigator handling his case, and apparently, my testimony about what I overheard at the wedding was exactly what they needed to crack the whole thing open. Here's the really crazy part, Sarah wasn't even supposed to target me originally. According to what the investigators found, she was supposed to go after this other guy, Kevin, who's a doctor and makes way more money than I do. But Kevin turned out to be gay, which she didn't figure out until after several dates, so she pivoted to me as her backup plan. I don't know whether to be insulted or relieved that I was someone's second choice for marriage fraud. The investigators showed me some of the evidence they've collected, and it's insane. These women had detailed spreadsheets rating potential targets based on income, family wealth, likelihood to propose quickly, and something they called manipulation susceptibility. Guess where I scored high on that last one? Yeah, that stings. They had group chats where they shared tactics for pushing guys toward quick engagements. Things like mentioning how their visas were complicated to create urgency, love bombing to make guys feel special, and even specific scripts for deflecting questions about their immigration status. Sarah apparently bragged in these chats about how easy I was to manipulate. She called me pathetically romantic and said I was eating out of her hand within 2 weeks. She also made jokes about my family's money and how she was going to milk this cow for everything he's worth. Reading those messages felt like getting punched in the gut all over again. But it also made me realize how calculated everything was. The way she teared up when I asked about her visa? Practiced. The way she pushed for a quick wedding? Standard operating procedure. Even the specific compliments she gave me were apparently from their shared playbook. The investigators told me that this ring had successfully pulled off at least 12 fraudulent marriages over the past 3 years. 12 American men who thought they'd found love and were actually just victims of an organized scam. Most of these guys are now dealing with divorces, annulments, and in some cases, women who got their green cards and then immediately filed for separation. A few of the women actually got pregnant on purpose to make the relationships harder to escape from. I am so grateful I overheard the conversation when I did. Sarah's final attempt. 2 days ago, Sarah made one last desperate play. She somehow got my work number and called me at the office, crying and begging me to reconsider. She claimed that everything I'd heard about the fraud ring was lies, that she was being framed by jealous friends, and that her feelings for me were real. When I told her I'd seen the chat logs on the spreadsheets, she completely lost it. Started screaming that I was a naive idiot who never deserved her anyway and that she could have done so much better than settling for someone like me. Then, in the span of about 30 seconds, she flipped back to crying and begging, saying she'd do anything to make it work and that she'd learned her lesson. It was honestly disturbing to watch someone switch between personas that quickly. It really drove home how much of our relationship had been an act. I recorded the call, which is legal in Texas with one-party consent, and gave it to the investigators. Her admitting that she settled for me and calling me naive while also claiming to love me didn't exactly help her case. The wedding vendor situation. One thing I haven't mentioned yet is the financial mess this whole situation created. Obviously, I'm out the money for the wedding, about $15,000 total, but it gets more complicated than that. Some vendors are being understanding about the situation, especially after the local news picked up the story about the fraud ring. The venue manager actually called me personally to apologize and offered me a discount if I ever want to book them again in the future, which, let's be honest, is not happening. But other vendors are being less flexible. The photographer is demanding full payment despite not delivering final photos, and the caterer is keeping the full deposit even though we barely touched the food. My lawyer says I might be able to recover some costs by suing Sarah for fraud, but since she's being deported and probably doesn't have any assets in the US, it's likely not worth the effort. The ring situation is particularly annoying. I spent $8,000 on her engagement ring, and Sarah is refusing to give it back. She claims it was a gift and that she deserves to keep it. My lawyer says that legally, engagement rings are considered conditional gifts that should be returned if the marriage doesn't happen, but enforcing that while she's fighting deportation is complicated. Honestly, at this point, I just want her gone and I'll eat the financial loss. It's expensive, but it's still cheaper than getting divorced after she got her green card and potentially having to pay alimony. Family reactions. My family's reaction to all the new information has been interesting. My mom went from feeling sorry for Sarah to being absolutely furious. She keeps saying she knew something was off but wishes she'd spoken up sooner. My dad, who's usually pretty calm about everything, is livid. He's the one who actually suggested I talk to a lawyer about suing Sarah for the money. He keeps saying things like that woman made a fool of our whole family and she had us all believing her sob story. My younger sister Emma has been the most supportive throughout this whole thing. She never liked Sarah and apparently told my mom multiple times that something seemed fake about her. Emma's been helping me go through all the wedding gifts and figure out what needs to be returned to whom. The most awkward part has been dealing with mutual friends who attended the wedding. Some of them are being supportive, but others seem to think I overreacted. A few people have suggested that maybe Sarah really did love me and the visa thing was just a bonus, not the main motivation. Those people clearly haven't seen the chat logs where she called me pathetically romantic and joked about milking this cow. Lessons for other guys. Since posting this story, I've gotten dozens of private messages from guys sharing similar experiences or asking for advice. It's honestly depressing how common this seems to be. Here are some red flags I wish I'd recognized sooner. The timeline obsession. If someone is pushing hard for quick milestones, exclusivity, moving in, engagement, marriage, without a good reason, be suspicious. Love doesn't have to be rushed. Visa vagueness. If someone is secretive or emotional about their immigration status, dig deeper. Legitimate visa issues are complicated but not typically mysterious. Friend group dynamics. Pay attention to how their friends talk about Americans and relationships. If there's a pattern of contempt or treating people like means to an end, that's a huge red flag. Financial curiosity. Someone asking detailed questions about your job, salary, family wealth, etc. early in the relationship might be gathering intelligence, not just getting to know you. Cultural excuse overuse. While cultural differences are real, don't let someone use it's a cultural thing to excuse behavior that makes you uncomfortable. Isolation tactics. If someone discourages you from taking time to think about big decisions or makes you feel guilty for wanting to slow down, that's manipulation. Moving forward. The whole experience has been traumatic, but I'm honestly feeling pretty good about how it turned out. Yeah, I'm out some money and I look like an idiot for missing all the red flags, but I avoided getting trapped in a fraudulent marriage with someone who saw me as nothing more than a paycheck and a passport. I've been going to therapy twice a week to work on my people-pleasing tendencies and my need to rescue people. My therapist says that people like Sarah specifically target guys like me because we want to be helpful and we ignore red flags when someone seems to need us. Work has been going great. The promotion I mentioned came with a nice raise, and my boss has been really understanding about everything. Apparently, his brother went through something similar a few years ago, so he gets it. I'm planning to take some time off next month to visit my college roommate in Denver. He's been wanting me to come out for a while, and I think some mountain air and guy time will be good for my head. The satisfaction factor. I know some people think it's petty, but I'm not going to lie. There's definitely satisfaction in knowing that Sarah's scheme backfired so completely. She thought she'd found the perfect mark, a lonely software engineer with a good job and family money who was desperate enough for love to ignore obvious red flags. Instead, she ended up with nothing. No green card, no citizenship, no financial security, and a deportation order. Her entire plan collapsed because she got overconfident and talked too freely around the wrong person at the wrong time. The best part is that she did this to herself. If she'd just been honest about her visa situation from the beginning, I probably would have helped her find legitimate solutions. I'm not heartless. If someone I cared about was facing deportation, I'd do whatever I could to help them legally. But she chose deception and manipulation, and now she's facing the consequences. Every time I think about her sitting in some lawyer's office being told there are no options left, or packing her stuff to go back to Romania, I smile a little bit. She gambled on being able to manipulate me indefinitely, and she lost everything. TLDR. Found out at my wedding that my fiancée was only marrying me for a green card. Left the reception, got the marriage annulled, and now she's being deported. Zero regrets.